I was employed roughly 30 miles from where I lived, making my presence at home during daylight hours uncommon unless necessitated by work. Yet, on that particular Wednesday morning, I found myself making an exception. By 10 a.m., having completed my professional duties, I chose to briefly visit my residence, not expecting to encounter anyone there. My kids, Lisa and Elma, were supposed to be in school, and my spouse, Monica, usually dedicated 2 hours to her gym routine every Wednesday before her afternoon shift at a boutique, starting at noon. Therefore, spotting a silver metallic Volvo V70 parked in my driveway was unexpected. Monica had not informed me of any guests, and skipping her fitness session was unusual for her. Intrigued by the V70, a model commonly seen around here, I sought to uncover its owner through our National Car Registry, which provides such information via a simple SMS query. After sending a message containing the vehicle's license plate number, I promptly received the owner's details. The reply revealing the vehicle belonged to Monica's employer, Paris Fashion Abe, managed by Alina and Eric Alfredson, both in their 40s and noted for their ambition, piqued my interest further. My acquaintanceship with them was minimal, having never attended any social events they hosted. I speculated on the reason behind their potential visit, considering significant implications if it were Alina, and graver concerns if Eric, especially amidst circulating rumors. Still, I clung to the hope of a benign rationale. Approaching the situation with caution, I readied my phone's 5-megapixel camera, not foreseeing its use, merely as a precaution. Upon quietly entering my home, finding both the kitchen and living room empty, the sound of faint noises heightened my anxiety. The master bedroom's door was shut, yet, upon closer listen, a woman's voice, presumably Monica's, was audible. Without hesitating, I opened the door, camera ready. Monica and Eric became aware of my presence as I neared the bed, capturing the moment with my phone's flash before emotions propelled me to physically confront Eric, striking him in the face and then forcefully kicking him as he lay on the ground. Monica's screams were met with my demands for silence. Eric offered no resistance as I dragged him out, leaving him beside his vehicle naked before tossing his clothes out, cautioning him to vacate my property swiftly. He complied without delay, and I instructed Monica to leave and not return until the following day, informing her our children would be staying with her parents, whom I'd drop them off with after school. Monica's attempts at explanation were met with my insistence on silence, and she soon left. Reflecting on those moments, I realized the shock must have been overwhelming, as my recollection of the hours following the incident feels like navigating through a fog. Nevertheless, I vividly recall contacting my place of employment, notifying them about my circumstances, and committing to return by Monday. Afterward, I reached out to Eric's partner to reveal that I had discovered her spouse naked in my bed with my spouse. I vividly remember her swearing like a seasoned sailor. Following this, I arranged for the biggest dumpster available to be positioned on my property. The subsequent action involved relocating all of Monica's clothing and belongings to the garage. I also relocated the few items she had introduced to our residence when we initially cohabited, encompassing all the gifts she had accumulated from her family and other kin during our union. All her possessions were piled on a plastic sheet on the garage floor. Subsequently, I employed my electric saw to disassemble the notably pricey bed where Monica had betrayed our trust. Following this, I proceeded to demolish all the additional furnishings in our home, with the exception of the children's bedrooms, which I left as they were. Upon the arrival of the dumpster, I disposed of all the leftover contents from the cabinets, followed by the broken furnishings. The disposal was indeed an expensive affair, given Monica's taste for premium items. At that moment, the financial setback of losing these items paled in comparison to the emotional impact of my shattered marriage. A colleague owned a holiday residence near the city, infrequently used by his family. I got in touch with him, shared my ordeal, and leased the property until I could secure accommodation close to my job. During a lunch break in the city, I visited the bank, accessed our shared accounts, and split the funds evenly. After clearing out everything except my apparel and personal belongings, I undertook the cleaning of the house. In the evening, I started working in my still neat home office by downloading a photo of Monica and Eric onto my computer. It was a definitive shot of them in various poses, both staring straight into the camera, unmistakably identifying them. Aware of Eric's numerous political ambitions, including his desire to lead his party, I recognized that politicians often crave media attention, and Eric now received substantial exposure as I forwarded the incriminating photo of him with Monica to every local official I could contact via email, with a note outlining their misconduct. I also sent printed photos to those lacking email. Throughout the day, Monica repeatedly phoned me. I responded to each call, each time informing her that there was nothing to discuss at that point. Surprisingly, the police did not visit, implying Eric hadn't reported the physical confrontation I had with him. I spent the night in my son's bedroom and woke feeling regretful, acknowledging the severity of my reaction in my initial shock and anger. This might shed light on why Vikings were historically dreaded across European shores. Nonetheless, I concluded that reacting excessively was preferable to acting imprudently. When a man found out about his wife's infidelity while perusing the morning paper, he stumbled upon an intriguing headline: "Naked Man in Vehicle Collision." The following article detailed an incident where a nude man crashed his car into a trash truck and, not having buckled his seatbelt, sustained numerous injuries, yet the airbags shielded him from more serious damage. One thing was clear: no one could hold me accountable for his facial injuries. And another thing was certain: there would indeed be more revelations, undoubtedly more coverage in the press regarding the scandal involving such a notable politician. Monica came back home at 10 a.m. and was shocked to find the dumpster on our lawn, and upon entering the almost bare house, she began screaming for several minutes until she managed to ask, "What have you done?" I replied, "What have I done? What have you done? You've destroyed our marriage, and I've disposed of what remained of it. Your things are in the garage. Take them away before the house gets sold." She exclaimed, "Are you aware of what befell Eric? And do you grasp that I've been terminated from my position? Don't blame me. Is it indeed my liability that you and Eric shattered our union and your vocation?" She offered no reply. Rather, she paced through the dwelling, bellowing when the severe consequences of her betrayal dawned on her. Subsequently, she dialed the authorities and lingered outside until the patrol car pulled up. Two youthful female officers inquired whether they could peruse the residence. I agreed, and they questioned me regarding Monica's belongings, examining both the home and the garage for a while before taking their leave. They extended their condolences to Monica, noting my impetuous reaction was a regrettable mistake yet not criminal. Monica hurled insults at me and abandoned our abode. Our offspring and Monica resided with her progenitors, and upon reaching out the next day, I set up a rendezvous for a conversation since Monica declined any interaction with me. We convened at a coffee shop, and acknowledging we couldn't rewrite history, we opted to converse about what lies ahead. Holding Monica's parents in esteem, I unveiled the situation to them and disclosed my intention to secure a flat near my job. I desired for the children to remain in their familiar educational environment and close to their companions, hence I suggested Monica retain guardianship. My only condition was that I desired bi-weekly visits with the children and on select holidays, plus shared vacations. Monica's parents recognized the significance of sustaining a healthy paternal bond for the kids and even proposed aiding Monica in compensating me for the house, as the discussion seemed to have gone in Monica's favor more than expected. She agreed to a meeting to iron out the unresolved matters. I encountered her at the same coffee shop where I had met with her parents, and as we both acknowledged our irreversible past, we steered clear of that topic. Our focus was on arranging for what's to come. We concurred on matters concerning the children, and she indicated that she, along with her parents, was arranging to buy me out of our home. Through his network, my superior found me a favorably located, agreeable apartment, which I could move into after a month. On an alternate Friday, without my kids, my co-worker Anna invited me to dine with her and her spouse, Ralph. I accepted, and to my pleasant surprise, they had also asked Ralph's newly single sister, Elise, to join. Elise was quite fetching and remarkably easygoing, a bit junior to me, and we relished our time together that night. We also scheduled a trip to the major shopping center in our county seat the next day. The excursion went well, and soon enough, Elise's 5-year-old daughter, Lena, and I hit it off. That evening, Elise and I agreed to cook dinner at her place. The trio of us enjoyed the cooking and the meal immensely. Mid-dinner, Lena gazed at me and asked, "Do you want to wed my mom?" Taken aback. I could hardly say no, hence I replied, "I'd be delighted to, but your mom has to ponder it first." Lena turned to her mother and probed, "Have you thought about it?" Elise beamed at us and said, "Certainly, I assure you, I'll consider it thoroughly." Later, after Lena had retired to bed, Elise and I indulged in tender caresses on the sofa, and she shared that Lena was keen on her remarrying since her dad had already settled with his new partner, and in Lena's view, I seemed a suitable spouse. I kissed Elise and vowed to do all within my means to honor my promise to Lena. She surprised me by suggesting I spend the night, with the caveat that I behave as a gentleman. Unsure of Elise's gentlemanly standards, I consented to the role. Opting for a cautious approach, I kissed her gently, slid my hand under the hem of her dress, and murmured, "It's as if we've been together forever, and I've loved you all along." She chuckled and queried, "Are you jesting?" She didn't resist as my hand ventured higher under her dress, stroking her thighs, and I professed, "No, I'm sincere, utterly sincere." She gazed directly into my eyes, questioning, "Are you sincere, or is this an attempt at seduction? How can I trust this? Believe in me," was my response. Her eyes still locked on mine, she confessed, "I do believe you, and I have developed feelings for you too. But isn't it strange to express such things on our initial meeting?" I held her close and shared, "It's hard to explain how it happened so quickly, yet it's true. I've fallen for you." As I began to remove her clothes, she did not resist but firmly stated that we must practice safe intimacy. She explained she was not using contraception and had not anticipated that I would come prepared with protection for our first date. After disrobing, I guided her to the bedroom where we engaged in an intensely passionate encounter. She later shared that she had never felt such a connection with her ex. Elise and I spent the remainder of our time together in gentle affection and conversation until we fell asleep. Fearing she might be viewed as unworthy of respect and that I might abandon her, I reassured her with sincerity about the depth of my feelings. The following day, I treated Elise and Lena to dinner at a renowned inn, feeling like a real family unit. Come Monday, curiosity about my weekend was rampant at work, and it was evident from my attitude that I had an exceptional weekend. Indeed, the dinner hosted by Anna was a heartfelt effort to uplift someone feeling low, and it ended up exceeding everyone's expectations. Following a scandal, Eric Alfredson was deserted by his wife and political colleagues, leading him to move away from the city. Monica took our house in the divorce, secured a new job in an office, and is now dating several men she met online. While I have yet to meet him, my children seem to like him. I'm happy because Lisa and Elma get along well with Elise and Lena. Elise and I are busy with wedding preparations and considering starting a family. Our relationship is thriving, and we're looking for a house in a nice area. Life has its challenges for most people, but currently for Elise, our kids, our former partners, and me, life is looking up. As for the latter narrative, it was undoubtedly a heavy-hearted day, especially a bleak Friday for me. Soon I would learn if my life had taken a disastrous turn. All I could do in the meantime was wait to see if the dreaded calamity would occur. However, I wasn't merely a forlorn individual dwelling on my misfortune. A crucial teaching from my previous sergeant echoed in my mind that action is the superior defense. My only choice was to confront the situation, aiming to retain my self-respect, even if I lost everything else. Luckily, I had been tipped off the day before, giving me enough time to brace for the impending event. That's why I was seated in a friend's black Peugeot 307, discreetly positioned in a corner of the motel parking lot, anticipating my wife's post-luncheon appearance. The air was thick with tense expectation as I watched for her red Toyota Yaris to arrive. She showed up, followed shortly by her companion in his large BMW, who parked beside my wife's vehicle, exchanged brief greetings, and then walked to the registration desk. I seized the opportunity, entered her Toyota on the passenger side through the unlocked door, and confronted her. "My wife, shocked," exclaimed Billy. "What are you doing here?" I handed her a brown envelope, stating just handing over divorce papers to my cheating soon-to-be ex-wife. "Have a good time with your distinguished gentleman, and feel free to extend your stay as you please." She vehemently opposed, declaring emphatically, "No, no, no, you're completely mistaken. This is not what it appears to be. Please let me clarify why I'm here. I promise you, it's not for the reasons you think. I'm here to seek a divorce. And it doesn't concern me in the slightest whether you were cozy with that coward who scurried away to fetch the key to your loved den. Continue to be as disloyal and deceptive as you like, as I've said. It doesn't bother me." Evidently, my formerly loving wife had hoped for a more idyllic encounter this afternoon with her apparently keen paramour, as she broke down crying. Just then, her supposed true love came back, flaunting the motel key, and seeing Rebecca in tears, still in her car, he approached to ask, "Who is this man, and what has he done to you?" As he spoke, I stepped out of the car, pulled a small plastic bottle from my pocket, and as I advanced towards him, I heard her shout, "He's my husband, and he's intent on divorcing us both over this." The lover retorted, "I'll rid you of that absurd idea, you miserable fool." When the lover faced me, I aimed at his face, squeezed the bottle filled with a water and soap solution, and the stream directed at his face and eyes temporarily blinded him, making him scream in anger. While he was momentarily disabled, it was time for my secondary weapon, a dart with a tri-pronged tip. I quickly positioned myself behind him, swung my right arm decisively, and thrust the dart through his pants and underwear deep into his left buttock. Thanks to the dart's barbed tip, it was securely lodged and could not be extracted without a doctor's help. My action was effective, so I left, abandoning the now truly unfortunate pair behind he with soap in his eyes, a dart in his backside, swearing profusely. My deceitful wife was left in the car, sobbing uncontrollably. I returned to my car and left the motel area smoothly. Regardless of what might happen later that Friday, it was clear those two wouldn't be engaging in any romantic endeavors. I am Billy Spinson, a 37-year-old man from Scandinavia, currently wedded to Rebecca, aged 36. We are parents to Emil, 9, and Estelle, 7. Rebecca and I have been together for 11 years, married for a decade. We have almost everything a couple in our situation could desire, so we ought to be extremely happy. Yet we are not satisfied. In my opinion, the main source of our discontent is Rebecca's mother. Though she isn't literally green, lacks a tail, and does not exhale fire, she should indeed be seen as a formidable dragon who has never missed a chance to cause trouble for me. This began from our very first meeting. I was invited to dinner at Rebecca's home, which felt more akin to an inquisition than a friendly dinner. After a series of probing questions, the dragon expressed her distaste for my name because Billy is a diminutive, criticizing the use of such names by stating that noble families do not name their children thus, including names like Billy, Kenny, Ronnie, Molly, Nellie, Cindy, etc. Appreciate the insight, I mused. I was taken aback as both Rebecca and her apparently submissive father remained quiet while I was disparaged by the dragon. She also commented that Spinson seemed like a typical working-class surname from the era when a son would take his father's first name followed by son as his last name. She went on, voicing her disappointment that Rebecca hadn't chosen better, especially since her other daughter, Natalie, was engaged to marry a man with aristocratic ties. Having had my fill, I stood, challenged the supposed nobility of Natalie's fiancé's lineage and his unemployment, suggesting he was a parasite on social welfare. Without awaiting a reply, I proposed to Rebecca that we step outside. To my surprise, Rebecca agreed, and we departed from what I considered the dragon's den. I knew Natalie's fiancé Alexander from my school days and wasn't astounded by his knack for persuading Rebecca's mother to view him as an ideal match for Natalie. That was not my concern. What was important was the growing connection between Rebecca and me, which, despite getting stronger, nearly led to Rebecca's mother showing outright enmity. When she phoned me, furiously expressing her opinions on the kind of scoundrel I really was, including her own and those held by other esteemed individuals, and declared that hosting any wedding at her expense was beyond consideration, the Los Cristianos Scandinavian Church, situated on the Spanish Canary island of Tenerife, stands as a prime location for personal wedding ceremonies. Consequently, Rebecca and I, accompanied by our dearest companion, ventured there to exchange vows. Rebecca and I landed excellent positions in a city 210 km from our childhood home, leading to limited interactions with her mother, who devoted her efforts and a significant sum of money towards Natalie and Alexander. The ensuing years brought prosperity for Rebecca and myself, along with our 2 children. We garnered substantial salaries, acquired an attractive house, and established a wealth of friendships in our new locality. Our private life remained gratifying, and due to the distance, my encounters with Rebecca's kin were minimal since her parents never paid us visits. Upon returning to our hometown, I reconnected with my relatives, and Rebecca spent time with hers. Ultimately, even Alexander grew weary of the tyrannical woman we recognized as our mother-in-law. Remarkably, he had succeeded in his profession and keenly accepted a job promotion that entailed moving to a new area 280 km distant. Following some discussions with Natalie, he gave her a clear choice: endure the separation or pursue a divorce. She decided to join him in his new role. Suddenly, the authoritative woman recalled she had a daughter named Rebecca and began making daily calls. These conversations gradually led Rebecca to become mysteriously distant towards me. The talks increasingly revolved around criticisms of my actions, what I hadn't done or should do, and even more about Natalie and Alexander's current well-being. Our relationship further deteriorated when I pointed out to Rebecca that a significant reason for Alexander's move was to escape the oppressive dragon, his mother-in-law. Misfortunes seemed to gather together, and Rebecca's warmth towards me further diminished when a new co-worker of distinguished ancestry joined her office. Shortly after, Rebecca extolled him as though he were a superhero, or at least a true nobleman. He was wed to a nurse currently volunteering at a medical aid center in Tanzania, Africa, with roughly 3 months left in her tenure. The nobleman and his spouse had plans to purchase a house upon her return, but in the meantime he resided in our city, renting a space at his wife's sister's residence, who was also married. Rebecca irritated me by comparing my behavior, speech, and even my clothes to that noble colleague at her job. Needless to say, in those comparisons I was not the favored one. Although Rebecca and I still shared intimate moments, my overtures were often met with responses such as, "Oh, again, and haven't you had enough?" If not for our children and Rebecca's many admirable qualities, I might have left her by now, but she stayed faithful, an excellent mother, skilled in cooking, kept in shape, and we worked well together in keeping our house tidy and our garden beautiful. Had she not started her complaints and all her other resentful comments towards me, she would have remained my perfect spouse. Admittedly, I was imprudent for enduring all her complaints without sharing my own thoughts, which only aggravated our problems, like one night after our children had retired. Rebecca blurted out, "I wish you were more like my co-worker. If you're so smitten with that misleading conduct, why not seek a separation and enjoy your folly freely? But as long as we're married, I'll not stand for any cheating. Forget about deceiving me secretly, and know that I'll expose him. Even though you may act imprudently, your deeds will bear a heavy price." Rebecca started shouting uncontrollably. "You absolute degenerate. What did you just say to me? How dare you disrespect me? Be sure you'll regret it. Wouldn't it be just if your customers were forced to pay?" I replied before she could come back with a biting retort. Scared and weeping children came to us, and I tried my best to calm them. Following her outburst, 2 particularly stressful weeks passed. The first weekend she took our children to see her parents, and the next weekend, when Natalie and Alexander came to us, Rebecca played the role of the attentive wife and was kind to me until our visitors left on Sunday morning. As we said goodbye, she commented, "Don't delude yourself into expecting any affection from me." The incident intensified on Thursday when a female co-worker of Rebecca's reached out to me during office hours. She quickly introduced herself before cutting to the chase, stating, "There's this new, quite handsome man at our workplace, and your wife, along with myself and another unmarried colleague, have all been competing for his affection. Despite our attempts to convince your wife to step back from this rivalry, given her marriage to a respectable man, she dismissed our concerns. Presently, she's proudly claiming victory in our little competition and has plans to see him at a motel tomorrow post-lunch. I expressed my gratitude for her call and persuaded her to keep our discussion a secret, allowing me to tackle the matter privately. Observing Rebecca after returning home, I noted her being exceptionally jovial. Reminded of a lesson from a sergeant during my time in the military, who held in high regard the Apache warrior's approach of unexpected assaults and rapid retreats, I realized I had to employ a comparable tactic. Lacking any training in physical combat, and considering Rebecca's gloating about her paramour's expertise in martial arts, the surprise element was essential. With pepper spray being illegal and out of reach, I chose a rudimentary substitute, a tiny plastic container filled with a mixture of hair shampoo and water. This emergency solution was verified to be quite bothersome after I subjected myself to a test, causing considerable irritation. The sergeant used to elaborate on how silently fired arrows with hooked ends from a hidden spot could instill terror among the troops on the Arizona battlefields. While a bow and arrows weren't an option for confronting Rebecca's lover, I felt motivated to emulate the idea with resources from my garage. I adjusted a dart by attaching 3 1cm segments of sewing needles at divergent angles on its tip, forming a hooked end, which I imagined would be challenging to remove from a tender part of the body without professional medical help, though I had no desire to experiment with this device on myself. After pondering over it, I came up with a simple strategy that didn't necessitate acquiring elaborate equipment for my plan. Presenting Rebecca and her lover with divorce papers, catching them off guard, would provide me with the chance to deploy the barbed dart into his backside. I doubted he would maintain any romantic interest in my wife with the dart embedded in him. The next day, Rebecca wore a provocative outfit, yet I chose to overlook it and refrained from any comments. We both acted as though it was just another regular Friday. At my job, I exchanged vehicles for the day with my colleague and good friend Eric, a swap we occasionally made when he required my bigger Volvo V70 for his more compact car. In the morning, I went to the courthouse for divorce documents and filled out a form at my workplace. With some effort, I got in contact with the main office of the humanitarian organization in Tanzania and secured the email of the wife of Rebecca's lover. Then, by midday, I proceeded to Rebecca's office, noting that both her and her lover's vehicles were still in the parking area, a sign they had lunch at the nearby diner before planning to go to a motel. Consequently, I picked up a couple of hot dogs and stationed myself at the motel. As anticipated, the couple arrived at the motel, and my plan unfolded exactly as envisioned, affirming that my military background was indeed useful, for which I was grateful. At 3:30 p.m., my home phone rang, and it was the same lady who had alerted me about Rebecca's motel plan the previous day, asking if I had made the motel visit and if outcomes were as expected. I thanked her for her follow-up and confirmed my action, but mentioned that Rebecca's co-workers were not exactly pleased to see me there. I tried to ease the situation with Rebecca by handing her the divorce papers, but the act did not lighten the atmosphere. The man resorted to threatening violence, which led me to defend myself, causing him to suffer a wound on his backside. It appeared Rebecca had to take him to the hospital. By any measure, it was hardly a romantic affair, at least from my viewpoint. I affirmed the accuracy of my narrative, emphasizing my lack of incentive to lie. Awaiting my wife's return, I proposed that the inquirer could confirm the details by reaching out to her, though I warned I couldn't guarantee her story's completeness. The inquirer, whose identity was unclear, thanked me and asked for Rebecca's mobile number, which I supplied, hoping their ensuing dialogue would prove informative. Subsequently, I sent an email to the gentleman's wife in Africa, recounting the full incident. Rebecca arrived home by 4, noticeably distressed. She demanded an immediate conversation, to which I agreed, remarking that she and her paramour had gotten what they wanted. yet it was absurd to think I would tolerate their intended slight quietly. I declared my readiness to uphold my self-respect. Although my actions hadn't harmed her, they had caused significant distress to him, necessitating a visit to the emergency room, for which she warned I would be held responsible. I explained that now 4 adults and 2 children were bearing the cost of her and that reprehensible man's actions. It's unrealistic to assume the unfortunate nurse in Africa felt anything but dismay upon receiving my detailed email about her and her husband. Now, she's aware of the dishonorable, cheating rogue she had entrusted her life to. She exclaimed, "Did you really do such a horrible thing to his innocent wife? Threatening me with divorce was dreadful." "I haven't made any threats. Just sign the divorce papers and you'll secure fair terms to become self-sufficient within 6 months. Refusal to sign and seeking legal advice will only cost you more, and ultimately you'll be presented with the same terms," I advised her. Realizing my seriousness, she began to weep. "Oh my God, are you really serious? Please, hear me out. I've committed no wrongdoing. Indeed, you have, by joining your misguided mother's vendetta against me for no legitimate reason. Simply because I don't carry a prestigious name, you allowed her to persuade you into perpetually antagonizing me. You've succumbed to a colleague you deem superior to me in every aspect, as you've often stated. I found out you were competing with 2 single co-workers for a date with this so-called honorable man. Winning this absurd contest, you left work early today to meet him at a motel for your reward, thus betraying our marriage by being unfaithful with a married man. Given my views on infidelity, the repercussions should have been apparent to you." She continued to sob. "I've never been unfaithful to you, neither today nor any other day, and that's the truth. And you're the only man I love." "Did you forget we have 2 children?" "What about them? Our children are the only reason I've tolerated your constant complaints this long. Every day, I'm reminded of how utterly worthless I am, according to your mother and your own assessment, compared to that pathetic excuse of a real man you saw at the motel and evidently adore. I'm disgusted by your attempt to deceive and fed up with the endless grievances you've been voicing." Ultimately, she acknowledged the inevitability of our separation, and we began discussing the divorce. Rebecca consented to sign the papers after I agreed that we both would stay in our house without seeing others for the 6-month period until the divorce was completed. 6 weeks after I took action to prevent Rebecca's alleged infidelity, unusual developments have unfolded, reshaping the remnants of my marriage. I've discovered a wonderful wife, truly excellent. Rebecca has become a completely altered individual, seemingly oblivious to my previous insignificance just weeks ago. Now, Rebecca and I treat each other with respect and engage in more shared activities than in the months leading up to our problems coming to light. Admittedly, we no longer share a bed or bedroom. Honestly, I don't miss the sympathetic, brief encounters she offered in the time before her attempted infidelity. It's peculiar, but I have to take her word that she never had sexual relations with her real man. Their motel date was intended to initiate their love story with sporadic intimate moments. The real man's wife urged him to go to Tanzania to volunteer at the aid camp until her contract concluded. He complied to save his marriage, and his wife informed me he's well and has been forgiven by her. She also implored me to pardon Rebecca, but I'm undecided, given we still have at least 20 weeks to reflect before our divorce is final. Yet, it'll be fascinating to observe whether Rebecca's attempt to be the ideal wife persists and for how long. It might be beneficial if a certain dragon remains concealed within the depths of Loch Ness, Lake Champlain, or simply in her den. Dear listeners, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments section below, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe.